the biggest block to overcome in getting out of depression and apathy is the debt of blame. Blame is whole subject in itself. Looking into it is rewarding. To begin with, there is a lot of payoff to blame. We get to be innocent. We get to enjoy self pity. We get to be the victim. We get to be the recipient of sympathy. Perhaps the biggest payoff to blame is that we get to be innocent victim and the other party is bad one. We see this game play out in the media constantly, such as endless blame game, dramatizing the multitude of controversy, character assassination, and lawsuits. In addition to the emotional payoff, the blame has been the considerable financial benefits. Therefore, it is tempting package to be the innocent victim, as it often financially rewarded. There was a famous example of this in New York City many years ago. A public conveyance accident occurred. People pour out of the front door of the vehicle, then gather in the small crowd, furnishing their name and address for the future financial benefit. Bystander quickly caught on the game and secretly climbed into the back of the vehicle so that they could be emerged as a front as injured innocent victim. They had not even been in the accident. They were going to collect a reward. Blame is the biggest excuse. It enables us to remain limited and small without feeling guilty. But there is a cost, the loss of our freedom. Also, the role of victim bring it in a self-perception of weakness, vulnerability, helplessness, which are the major component of apathy and depression. The first step out of blame is to see that we are choosing to blame. Other people who have that similar circumstances have forgotten, and handled the same situation in a totally different way. We earlier saw the case of Viktor Frankl, who chose to forgive the Nazi prison guard and to see a hidden effect in his experience at the concentration camps. Because others, such as Franklin, have chosen not to blame. That option is also open to us. We have to be honest and realize we are blaming because we choose to blame. This is true, no matter how justified the circumstances may appear to be. It is not a matter of right or wrong. It is merely a matter of taking responsibility of our own consciousness. It's totally different simulation to see. We have chosen to blame rather than to think we have to blame. In these circumstances, the mind often thinks, well, if the other person or event is to be blamed, then I must be. Blaming others or ourselves is simply not necessary. The traction of blame arises in the early childhood as daily occurrence in the classroom, playground, and at home among siblings. Blame is central issue in the endless court proceeding and lawsuit that characterize our society. In truth, blame is just another one of the negative program that we have allowed our mind to buy because we never stop to question it. Why must something always be someone's fault? Why must the whole concept of wrong be introduced to the situation in the first place? Why must one of us be wrong, bad, or at fault? What seemed like a good idea at a time may not have turned out well. That's all. Unfortunate events may have just happened. To overcome blame, it is necessary to look at the secret satisfaction and enjoyment we get out of the self pity, resentment, anger, self excuse, and to begin to surrender all this little payoff. The purpose of this step is to move up from being a victim of our feeling and choosing to have them. If we merely acknowledge and observe them, begin to dissemble them, and surrender the component part, then we are consciously exercising choice. In this way, we make our major move out of the morass of helplessness. It is helpful in overcoming resistance and taking responsibility for our negative programs and feeling to see that they come from a small aspect of our self. It is very nature of the smallest part of our self to think negatively. So there is an unconscious tendency to agree readily to its limited viewpoint. But that is not the whole of our beingness. For outside and beyond the smaller self in our greater self, we know we may not be conscious of our inner greatness. We may not be experiencing, but this is there. If we let go of resistance to it, we begin to experience it. Depression and apathy therefore result from the willingness to hang on to the small self and its belief system, plus the resistance to our higher self, which consists of all of the opposite of the negative feeling. It is nature of the universe that everything in it is represented by its equal and opposite. Thus, the electron equal and the opposite is positron. Every force has an equal and opposite counterforce. Yin is composited for the yang. There is a fear, but there is also courage. There is hatred, but its opposite is love. There is a timidity, but there is also bravery. There is stinginess, but also generosity. In the human psyche, every feeling has its opposite. The way out of the negative is therefore the willingness to acknowledge and let go of the negative feeling, and at the same time, willing to let go of the resistance of their positive opposite. Depression and apathy are the result of being the effect of negative polarity. How does this work in everyday life? Let's look at the example of someone's birthday that is approaching quickly. Because of things that have happened in the past, we have resentment and feeling unwilling to do anything for the birthday. Somehow it just seemed impossible to get out and shop for a birthday present. We resent having to spend the money. The mind conjures up all kind of justification. I don't have time to shop. I can't forget how mean she was. She could apologize to me first. In this case, two things are operating: clinging to the negative and the smallness in ourselves, and resisting the positive and the greatness in ourselves. The way out of apathy is to see, first of all, that I can't is an I want. In looking that I want, we see that it is because of the negative feeling as they have come up, can be acknowledged and let go. It is also apparent that we are resisting positive feeling. This feeling of love, generosity, and forgiveness can be looked at one by one. We can sit down and imagine the quality of generosity and letting go of resisting it. Is there something generous about ourselves? In this case, we know not be willing to apply it to the birthday person. In the beginning, we can begin to see in this the existence of such a quality as a generosity within our consciousness. We begin to see that as we let go, resisting the feeling of generosity, that there is a generosity. We do in fact enjoying to other under certain circumstances. We begin to remember the positive flood of feeling that come upon us when we express gratitude and acknowledge the gift that others have given us. We see that we have really been suppressing a desire to forgive. And as we let go of the resistance to begin forgiving, there emerge a willingness to let go of the grievances. As we do this, we stop identifying with our small self and begin consciously aware that there is something in us that is greater and will always be there but hidden from the view. This process is applicable in all negative situations. It enables us to change the context by which we perceive our current situation. It enables us to give it in a new and different meaning. It lifts us up from being the helpless victim to the conscious chooser. In the example given below, it doesn't mean we have to rush out and buy a birthday gift, but that does mean that we are no aware that we are in a current position out of the choice. We have total freedom with great latitude of action and choice. This is much higher state of consciousness than the helpless victim who is trapped by the past resentment. One of the law of consciousness is we are the only subject to a negative thought or belief. We consciously say that it applies to us. We are free to choose not to buy into negative belief system. How does this work in everyday life? Let's take a common example. The newspaper report unemployment at the record high. The television news commentators state no jobs are available. At this point, we are free to refuse to buy into the negative thought form. We can say instead, unemployment does not apply to me. By refusing to accept the negative belief, it is now has no hold over our own life. Example of our personal experience reveal that during period of high unemployment, such as after World War II, there was no problem getting a job. As a matter of fact, one could have two or three jobs at the same time: dishwasher, waiter, bellhop, cab driver, bartender, greenhouse worker, and window washer. This was the consequences of the belief system that said unemployment applies to other but not to me. And where there is a will, there is a way. There was also the willingness to recognize pride in return to unemployment. Another example is that of the belief system having to do with epidemic diseases. A few years ago, 14 Aquatents were observed closely during the episode of flu. One of the 40 people, 8 people came down with the flu, but 6 did not. Thanks for watching.